This is The Mint on ZTN Prime, your sneak peek into the world of business, finance and economies. I'm Eben Mabunda, coming to you from Zimbabwe's capital, Harare. Let's get started. Now, coming up, Africa has entered a new era where the commerce of development is being reshaped by continental integration and bold policy reforms. The African Continental Free Trade Area is at the center of this transformation, unlocking opportunities for trade, industrialization, and inclusive growth across a market of 1.4 billion people. Turning this vision into reality, however, requires strong policy alignment, citizen-led initiatives, and coordinated action across nations. With the world's youngest population, Africa's success will hinge on empowering its youth to drive innovation, entrepreneurship, and value creation within these emerging markets. The challenge and opportunity lies in transforming frameworks like the African Continental Free Trade Area into tangible prosperity for all. We speak to the chairman of the Patson Malisa Foundation, as well as the vice president of the United Nations Association of South Africa, Patson Malisa. Now, the Mint will be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Harare, tune into the beat.
Capitalk 100.4 FM, your source for news, business, sports, fashion, and more.
Experience the pulse of Harare's culture and lifestyle.
Capitalk 100.4 FM, Harare's top radio station.
Join the conversation with Zimbabwe's top personalities.
Subscribe now for fresh and infotainment content daily.
Capital 100.4 FM, Harare's heartbeat.
Catch exclusive interviews every weekday for candid, exciting, and thought-provoking conversations with your host, Erika Ndoro.
We talk about arts, we can talk about sports, we can even talk about politics, and sometimes we venture into a nice guitaristic play.
The one story where you can't get out of your head. Wakatarisa munhu so Erika like where you are sitting. Ndozongokona bata face so pasina munhu.
Wakasiya music yako yo afro chakuti ndo music manje yemuZimbabwe.
And I'm sure they're still saying the same thing now.
Yeah, so Shona kana kuti Chindevere kana mumwe mutauri muno muZimbabwe ndiwe iwewe. Ndiwo rupawo rwako. Ndicho chidadiso chako.
Catch me, Erika Ndoro, right here on ZTN Prime every single Monday at 7 p.m. whilst we get exclusive.
Dental checkups, experiments, games.
The mixture is making bubbles and the bubbles have changed color. Our balloon has been filled by carbon dioxide.
We have it all right here on Happy Sprouts. Catch us exclusively on ZTN Prime, DSTV channel 294.
Captain Wally J's about to take you to boot camp.
It's the riveting science and tech show that keeps you up to date with the hottest gizmos on the block and revealing the illustrious and innovative visionaries in Zimbabwe. So much to see, you'll keep swiping.
This cherry red beauty is the Dairy Auto M7 mini electric car.
They've designed our brute force incubator board.
Look at what we've got here.
Solar powered scarecrow was part of the project that I was supposed to complete.
Catch Swipe every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. on ZTN Prime, DSTV channel 294. Get the picture?
You're watching The Mint as we come to you from Zimbabwe's capital, Harare. I'm Eben Mabunda. Now, Africa is in a new era where the commerce of development is driven by continental integration and bold reforms. At the heart of this shift, the AfCFTA opens vast opportunities for trade, industrialization, and inclusive growth. Realizing this promise demands policy alignment, citizen participation, and youth empowerment to turn frameworks into tangible prosperity. Now, to help me unpack this subject is Patson Malisa, chairperson of the Patson Malisa Foundation. He's also the vice president of the United Nations Association of South Africa, joining us from Cape Town, South Africa. Sir, good day and thank you for joining us on The Mint.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Mabunda, and good day to your viewers.
Fantastic. To get the ball rolling, from your vantage point as a diplomat and development executive, as it were, how would you define the commerce of development in the African context, and what policy frameworks best enable it to somewhat thrive?
So, commerce development is basically the nexus between the profit of industrialization as well as the purpose of industrialization. So in terms of making sure that every trade and economic activity that is invested in and implemented by African countries yields a profit which is then purposed for the means of development. As you know, we are a primarily post-colonial society, and most of our industries and infrastructure was built on the auspice of perpetuating a colonial resource extraction economic model. So you'll find that the roads, the railways, and even the ship portals that would have been developed were specifically for the sake of resource extraction to send off elsewhere. So there are quite huge patches of the continent that have not been developed because they were not necessarily full of resource. So now, as development leaders and economists, our job now is to scale our economies to the point of understanding that there are certain places where they will need leverage based off of the advantage and the profitability of nearby economic activity, and also for more profitable countries and entities to be aware that indeed, not only as a matter of profit, but as a matter of service and duty, and also long-term prosperity, it is important to invest and reinvest capital gains as well as dividends into the development of society as a whole.
Given your experience, of course, with the Economic, Social and Cultural Council, how do you assess the alignment between the continental policy blueprints like the Agenda 2063 vis-a-vis the national development policies of the member states of the African Union?
You asked?
Relay the question again. Given your experience with the Economic, Social and Cultural Council, how do you assess the alignment between the continental policy framework such as the Agenda 2063 vis-a-vis the national development policies of the member states of the African Union?
Well, this is a ongoing struggle, actually, because, as you know, Agenda 2063 is a 50-year plan. And at secretariat level on the African continent, on the African Union stage, there has been a shift and also a realization that in order to make this a tangible development plan, it needs to be segmented into decade targets. And these decade targets are worked in tandem with the statistics as well as the economic models that would have been assessed at the time of their drafting. And now the problem that is there is the nexus between regional economic communities and national policy is not yet fully realized in terms of making Agenda 2063 a ongoing and immediate impact policy tool. It is mentioned in many development plans. However, because of its abstract nature, because of, again, the data analysis that has been involved in developing this plan, there is a sort of a rift. And this rift was even mentioned in the Kagame report, which was submitted in 2017, speaking towards the reforms of the African Union and giving a sort of more extensive advice in terms of making sure that at local level, African Union offices and organs can engage with countries and have them leverage on their strengths. Because as you know, not every country does the same thing, and not every country has the same resource makeup. And therefore, in the nexus of the plan and also the monitoring and evaluation, there needs to be this ongoing communication conversation towards ensuring that the real-time development models that are being advised can be assessed and also be tested for the sake of ensuring that reporting mechanisms and then addressing of ills can be put forth.
Right. Perhaps as follow-up to that, what role does citizen-led and citizen-oriented development, which your foundation champions, play in complementing government-led economic transformative efforts?
Indeed, as you will know throughout history, the primary drivers of economic transformation within continents and societies has been local commerce. It is really that government be the driver of economic activity. It can facilitate economic activity by ensuring that there is a comprehensive infrastructure as well as easy access towards the necessary tools in financing and also in reaching out to the rest of the world, either through diplomatic relationships or trade treaties. But the actual activity has to be citizen-led, because citizens have the real-time experience and they also have the real-time solution tools in order to reach real-time problems. And therefore, as a result of that, citizen-led and citizen-driven development means that the domestication of all things Agenda 2063 and all things national economic development are driven by your private business as well as your cooperatives. And with the first part that we've actually spoken to, which is, developmental commerce, knowing that the profits made are for the sake of reinvesting in developing communities, developing infrastructure, and developing societies, and improving the poverty line, so that the cost of living is a lot more affordable towards the end.
Right, I've got to pick your mind on this one. How can data, economics, and policy design be better integrated to produce inclusive and evidence-based economic development across the continent?
In fact, data is one of the key drivers of real-time economic development, and that's one of the key issues that has been mentioned as a problem within African developmental contexts, because a lot of the empirics that are needed to justly assess the true nature of the impact of our economic activity and even our policy interventions is not yet fully engaged. Yes, there are certain indicators that can sort of speak to the issues at hand. However, in terms of where the real-time manifestation of these interventions lies is yet to be fully understood. And therefore, as a result of that, a lot of developmental economics is to be applied where empirics as well as regressions are a regular part of discourse. And at the end of the day, it's going to take a lot of hard work. This is one part of policy development and economics that's not fun, because you have to be on the ground. You can't get this data by, researching on Google. You have to be there around the people where the lack is and where the trouble is, so that you can report justly and quantify it in a way that can be qualitatively addressed at the end of our interventions.
Right. Now, the African Continental Free Trade Area paints a very beautiful, futuristic picture of course, Africa's market and the need for integration. Now, the big question that I would ask is, in your view, are African states doing enough to harmonize trade, industrial and fiscal policies to foster shared prosperity within the continent?
Well, there's a hybrid intervention in that regard. There are countries that are conservative due to the issue that we've mentioned earlier on, that some countries, unfortunately, because of their lack of development, their primary export is labor. And as a result of that, you find a lot of immigration and an unbalanced discourse in that regard. So a lot of conservative approaches towards free movement of people and goods is still being approached in many of the African landscape. However, there are some very successful stories in terms of, neighbors coming together and talking and saying, even if we may know of and there may be certain imbalances, there still is a way that we can harmonize in order to further liberalize our borders and liberalize our trade in goods. And Zimbabwe is actually one of them in their communications with both Botswana and South Africa. A lot of interventions have come in place, especially over the last 24 months. I did not stress too much of that because I'm sure you've actually reported on quite a bit of it. But
we seem to have had a challenge with that particular connection there. Our technical team, of course, are on it just to get us further engagement with Patson Malisa, the Vice President of the United Nations Association of South Africa, speaking to us on the various issues that affect trade on the continent, the advancement of the continent of Africa, as well as how it is that the youth are central and key to the advancement of the African economic agenda. There are several issues to do with the barriers. You look at the state of trade on the continent, where it is that intra-Africa trade is at 15%. You juxtapose that to Europe, which is at about 65%. You look at Asia, about 62%. So this just gives you an indication of the ground that should and could be covered by the continent to try and bridge that particular gap. It looks like we've got Patson Malisa back on the line. Now, Patson, moving on from where we left off, there are several moving pieces where this jigsaw puzzle is concerned. How do you envision regional economic communities evolving under the AFCFTA as competitors, enablers, and or integration accelerators, as it were?
Indeed, they are meant to be the latter, which is integration accelerators. And the reason why they're at a much more greater vantage point is because they have real-time access to the heart of regional blocks. And you'll find that even with regards to the implementation of democracy charters, regional communities were mentioned as the primary drivers and implementers of solution-driven interventions. You'll find that a lot of times, for example, in the economic community of West African states, ECOWAS will be right at the forefront of avoiding unlawful change of government and things of that nature. And Southern African Development Community has also played a key role in stabilizing the region towards ensuring that the election processes and even the post-election processes do have that mediation and that mediator in place. So even with regards to economic activity, the regional economic communities have that real-time finger on the pulse that the African Union wouldn't necessarily have. That, of course, will then feed into data and again feed into the overall arch of that decade plan of action, which will then, of course, have to then streamline back to country industries. So our approach, which is driven by national interventions of regional economic communities with the drive of the harmonized African continental free trade area.
Right. And then there comes the elephant in the room, the infrastructure deficit that the continent currently has. What role do you believe that the financing of infrastructure projects, the digital infrastructure of the continent, transport and energy systems would play at rewriting the history of Africa's economic trajectory?
It goes without saying that infrastructure is one of the primary, if not the primary, impediment of economic trade in the African continent, whether it be in terms of movement of goods or movement of peoples. Infrastructure is a key element. And one of the other problems that we have is that in the first and second and third industrial revolutions, we were a piece of the puzzle for other economies. So we never really had an identity as far as an economic plan, nor an infrastructure plan. So even now with the fourth industrial revolution, we have a bit of a trouble in the sense that we have the raw material that is used to create the intellectual property that is utilized to make use of software, to make use of networks, and at the end of the day, AI-driven economy. However, the cost of those software-ready infrastructure, whether it be machines or access to networks, that is still costly to the African continent. And this is a matter of both economic as well as political will, in the sense of, with what we have, what are the key elements that we'd like to reinvest in? And that will mean redirecting taxpayer money, also redirecting profits from dividends to say, yes, for this period, we might not necessarily be able to service shareholders with full dividends because the long-term benefit of reinvesting within the places where we operate will be beneficial for us at the end of the day. So it's really a matter of, again, redirecting the purpose of our economics to developmental commerce.
Right. Critical as well to the conversation when you look at Africa's youthful population and the quality of, as well as the quantity of innovations that are coming out of the continent. What innovative financing and policy mechanisms could help unlock youth entrepreneurship as a driver of Africa's structural transformation as we wrap up? Let me relay the question again. What innovative financing and policy mechanisms do you think could help unlock youth entrepreneurship as a driver of Africa's structural transformation?
Well, this again would have to be a matter of restructuring the way that we do business in Africa. For a very long time, the key stimulator of the economy has been government. And this, unfortunately, yields a rather limited means by which investment in innovation can be done, because risk assessment is very tight. There's a population to account to for the sake of answering why is it that you invested in drones when you were supposed to build a hospital. Those questions of which don't necessarily always get the answer that is most politically popular. And therefore, as a result of that, I think it'll be a very important liberalization of economic zones, particularly in places where you know that the youthful population is at its peak. Over 55% of our African population is under the age of 25. So that tells you that there is a reinvestment model that is possible and that is profitable if indeed there is an opening and liberalization of special economic zones. And these zones, particularly for the sake of creating hubs that allow for absorption not only of human talent, but also of infrastructural bodies. And, you know, basically the model that Silicon Valley had
Patson,
and has.
I'm going to have to jump in there. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. Thank you very much for joining us on The Mint. Of course, Patson Malisa, Foundation Chair, of course, joining us here on The Mint. He's also the Vice President of the United Nations Association of South Africa, engaging in conversation with ZTN Prime from Cape Town, South Africa. Now, that's a wrap on The Mint. Do follow us on our social media handles at Zim Papers TV Network, as well as at ZTN Prime. I'm Eben Mabunda, the money man. Let them do what they do. When we do what we do, we mean business. Thank you for watching and have a good day.